Humanoids, last lecture with me. Aren't you so sad? I hope you have enjoyed the course. I hope you've learned a lot from it. This time you'll notice I don't have a PowerPoint, just the notes. I'm also going to do my very best to just go over this quickly. The goal today really is just to review and highlight some of the main ideas I want you to take away from this class, because I know as semester goes along, you got a whole bunch of stuff coming at you. It's hard to retain it all. So how about we go over the ground one more time real quick, just hit the highlights in hopes that you get some value added that you really retain and you take away from this class. So that's what I want to do. And again, I'll try to keep it brief. You'll have these notes forever for the rest of your lives if you want them. Okay. Akbar, I need your help. Here we go. Like I copied and pasted what this course is all about, and I'm hoping that this was helpful for you in our objectives, which is really to make you a thoughtful citizen and member of a techno-scientific society, one that's characterized by the influence of science and technology in their rapid and growing development. So hopefully you feel like you have a better ability to understand, to express your ideas about the ethics dimensions of science, because we live in a scientific society. So I had big ambitions for this class, and hopefully we at least got some way towards them. Okay, now, what did I want to review here? Excuse me for messing up there. Okay, remember our section on ethics. Okay, what to take away from that? One, the key distinction between convention or law on one hand and ethics on the other. If we don't have this distinction, we can't determine the difference between a just and an unjust law. And we talked about whether that distinction really exists and how you can make it. Okay, so that's one. Two, remember there's three types of ethics. Descriptive ethics, and we use cloning and caste for that. Meta ethics, and we talked about relativism. And then normative ethics, and we used a reading on animal rights for that. Then last thing I want you to take away is, remember, within normative ethics, there's these four main normative ethical theories that we discussed. Consequentialism, or really what we talked about was utilitarianism. These theories, again, they try to tell you what makes something right or wrong, good or bad. And for a consequentialist or a utilitarian, it's the consequences of the decision that would make it right or wrong, good or bad. Then we talked about deontology, where it's more the intention or the motive of the action that makes it good or bad, right or wrong. We talked about virtue ethics, and then in that position being, it's the character of the person that really matters, their ability to judge, right? That's really what ethics is all about, is developing good people with good judgment. We talk about feminism or ethics and care, and there what matters is the relationships, the way we're constituted by these relationships in different ways, and they have these obligations and responsibilities tied up with them. Okay, so that's some of the big stuff to take away from ethics. Then we had a unit on science. Lots to say there, but look, I just picked three things. One, we call that demarcation problem. What are the criteria we have for distinguishing science from non-science? Or you could say good science from junk science. Two, we talked about many ways of seeing science. Often we say science as in the scientific method or methods, and I try to influence, or I try to get you to think of science in a pluralistic sense, that there might be many methods with an S that count as scientific, or processes. We also talked about science as bodies of a body of knowledge or of laws, science as institutions, science as scientists. And the big thing I try to influence or try to impress upon you was science as technoscience. That is, that there's really no way to draw a clean line between science and technology. Science is applied, technology is applied science. Okay, so those are some of the big things from that module. We talked a lot, really the beating heart of this class is this idea of values in science, or we use the term norms like rules in science. We talked about epistemically, that is about knowledge, the values or the norms in science. And this is in terms of what criteria determine whether we really have knowledge. And you can talk about the process. So what are the rules that govern the creation of knowledge? Because science is a non-narrative form of rationality. You can't just make it up. There must be some rules dictating the processes by which we arrive at knowledge. What are they? And then we talk about structure. So when you have a knowledge claim, what makes it scientific? So what makes scientific knowledge scientific? And one of the ones we talked about, for example, was this deductive nomological theory, or this covering law. F equals ma is true for whatever you're talking about. Right? That's one sort of theory of this structure that makes scientific knowledge scientific. But most of our emphasis was on ethics, of course. And we said something like the truth-seeking nature of science presupposes certain ethical norms, and above all, honesty, right? Or fidelity to experience and evidence. And from that, we can derive further normative claims about what it means to do science. Of course, you will remember for the rest of your lives Robert Merton's kudos: communalism or communism, universalism, disinterestedness, and organized skepticism, and his claim that in order for us to get a certified knowledge, right, you have to follow these norms. That's why he called them imperatives. It's imperative. You must, right? So these sort of ethics or ethical behaviors are simply necessary, part and parcel of doing science. We also spent a long time talking about RCR. One of the things you got to walk away with is knowing RCR, responsible conduct of research, and what's entailed with that. We talked about misconduct as narrowly defined by the US government, FFP, fabrication, falsification, plagiarism. Right? We also talked about this gray area, questionable research practices. And then we kind of launched off to the rest of our class by saying, is that enough? Is it enough to just avoid misconduct? In other words, is it enough to do things right, or do we have to also do the right things? And then we thought about extending ethics. In a big way, we thought about it was, well, are scientists responsible for the broader impacts of their knowledge? And if so, how much responsibility do they bear? Right? That kind of launched us into the remainder of the class. We spent some time on science with human subjects as sort of broadening or extending ethics beyond FFP. We talked about the Nuremberg Code, the centrality of informed consent, that this again brought us back to this first question on ethics. Look, if what the Nazi physicians and scientists were doing was legal in Nazi Germany, doesn't mean it was right. So we have to lean on that distinction between just and unjust laws. We then talked in the US context about the Tuskegee syphilis study. We also looked at the mistrust of indigenous groups when it comes to scientific research, scientists, and science. And coming out of Tuskegee, we talked about the Belmont Report and its 3 norms or values of informed consent, which is based in a respect for persons. You can't just use them, right? People are ends in themselves. They're not means to your ends. We talked about beneficence, that is roughly the distribution of good things versus potentially bad things that could come about from a research proposal involving human subjects. And we talked about justice, at least in the sense of how are the good things and bad things, the risks and benefits distributed across different groups of people. So that's something to take away from science with human subjects. I just have 2 more things here. We then look even more broadly at science and society, and we use this kind of heuristic of policy for science, and we talked about science budgets as basic statements of values. We also talked about this, I find fascinating, question about forbidding and forbidden science, whether we should ever just say no. We shouldn't go down that path and relinquish the pursuit of knowledge. Very difficult for our society because one of our foundational ethical norms is freedom of inquiry, is the intrinsic value of knowledge. Then we talked about science for policy, and we looked at three theories or models of thinking about the way in which science, um, what science does in democratic decision-making processes, right? We had this linear model with this excess of objectivity model and the merchants of doubt model. So that's it, that's what we covered. Again, to go back to the very beginning, what this course is all about, we live in a techno-scientific age. It's kind of obvious to us now, but most people living on planet Earth for the history of humanity did not live in this kind of culture, one that's premised on increasing levels of control of nature, increasingly accelerating rates of change. And I think that raises the question, what is our future? Are we heading for the stars? As I record this now, Elon Musk and the SpaceX company just docked successfully their crew on the space station. So are we Mars bound? Okay. Or are we heading for collapse? Are we going to get our foot caught in some techno-scientific trap that we've set out? Could it be climate change? Could it be a nuclear disaster? Could it be something else coming down the pike that we're just not able to actually control? Who knows? My hope, though, is that you walk away better informed, better capable to take part in these conversations that are shaping our society and shaping all of our lives. Okay, told you I'd keep it short. Hope this review is helpful. I wish you all the very best, and may the force be with you.